Guys, I'm thinking about what Jordan Oliver is going through. And to real quickly bring you up to speed, Jordan Oliver, who is the best wrestler in the country, has qualified for the Olympic Games. Now, hear me out. Jordan Oliver has qualified for the Olympic Games. Well, story's not quite done because then our country within that weight class specifically has to qualify for the Olympic Games. So even though Jordan's done his part, even though he is an Olympic trials winner, not in the games yet. And this really makes my stomach sick. I mean, I must tell you, it's very frustrating for me to watch what a wrestler will go through, to watch what a wrestler does go through. And all the way from sleeping on couches and not knowing where your next meal is, right? I get that that's a little bit of along the lines of when a grandparent would tell you, all I had to play with was a stick and a rock. I get it, but there's some truth to it. What they are doing purely for intrinsic value and to represent their family, their team, their coaches, in this case, the country, and be given very little appreciation for it. You have to really understand that. To then be like me and be flat frustrated that then opportunities are not there, even when you've done everything right, gone through the tournament and won it. Could you imagine winning a tournament? Winning the Olympic trials, but no Olympics. So, okay, it's fair. It's above board. This is how we have decided to do it as a community. We have decided to take every single possible opportunity we can from a guy, hold a tournament every 4 years, anything that we could do to make this difficult and make people quit, and then see who does it. And not only do they not quit, they got to have more points than the other guy when time runs out. You see how hard wrestling is? Okay. Now hold this thought, because Oliver's going to go over to Bulgaria. Now, he'll be the only freestyle guy. He'll have a couple of teammates with him. He'll have Adam Kuhn. He'll have Jesse Porter. All same situation. They got to go over there and get qualified. Now, hear this. They're going to take the top two. The top two placers at this tournament, those countries will be able to be represented in the Olympic Games. Hold that thought, because before you think you only have to win one side of the bracket, they then go to what's called a true second. So imagine a scenario where you're in the finals and you lose. You're now tired. You're now heartbroken. Oh, by the way, in 20 minutes, you're up against whoever got third if you guys didn't meet up through the tournament. I mean, it's one of these things, anything you could do to make things hard, which is the topic of today. Because as hard as this is for these guys, Adam Kuhn, who has multiple world medals, including one in the senior level in the last quad, has to go to the final wrestle-off. I don't agree with that. I don't agree with that at all. The last quad has to mean something. I will tell you, when I was wrestling, it was hard. It was very hard. But when we went into the Olympic trials, there was a rule. If you were ever a world or Olympic team member, you automatically qualified for the trials. You could just show up. I had a guy in my bracket, by the way, who was on a team like 7 years before. Last name of Giles. But he just showed up. It was a cool thing. He didn't do very well. That isn't the point. That isn't the point. He got something for his laurels. He got something for the hard work and the success that he'd had, even if it's just a chance to participate. And that was just for the trials. When I was born and came into this sport, are you ready for this? We had 10 weight classes for the Olympic Games. 105.5 pounds. You guys even know that used to be a weight class? Because it did. 220 pounds. I'm sure you did know that's a weight class because it was Kurt Angle's, by example. So I bring this to you because as hard as things were when I was coming through and I wasn't grateful for it, I always thought how hard it was. My goodness, I would be grateful. Under today's standards, 6 weight classes and now you must qualify the weight. Where did that come from anyway? I mean, all fairness, where did that come from? The one thing that makes the world and the Olympic Games so special is every country gets to send a representative. You will have a competitive architecture. And I went over to the sport of fighting, mixed martial arts. And I fought for a number of world championships, but I will share with you, candidly, there was a lot of politics involved with that. I was good on the microphone. I was good at manipulating the media. I could do certain things to get certain opportunities. That's the way the fight game works because there's no competitive architecture. So we don't actually ever know who the world champion is. We just know who we say is the world champion. Sports Illustrated doesn't question that. ESPN doesn't question that. The viewers don't question that. If that guy's got the belt, he must be the best in the world. But if you look at wrestling, which has a competitive architecture known as a bracket, and every human being alive gets to raise their hand, go through the process, and enter the games, and we'll whittle it down till there's one left standing. I mean, come on. It is a tremendous thing of honor. The Olympic Games and the World Championships may be the only true World Championships we have. I look around in this country, whether it's football or whether it's basketball, those organizations tell the truth. The National Football League, that's true. The National Basketball Association, that's true. But the media then calls them world champions. As soon as you win the national title in football or basketball, they will call you a world champion. That is false valor like I have never seen. We will put a dream team to the Olympics that will be picked. I disagree with that. 5 other guys ought to be able to get together and say, we want to play you. But they don't. And they don't do that because they don't have the competitiveness. They come from money. They come from fame. They're on TV on a regular basis. Most of them have very meaningful sponsors. I only share with you, it doesn't mean the same thing to them as it does to wrestlers, but it shouldn't because they haven't sacrificed the same. So when you see these wrestlers put in this spot, I just ask that you have a level of participation. And this sport can get very competitive. There is times you will cheer against Americans. You as an American will cheer against Americans. We all just did it 2 weeks ago. And none of us were unpatriotic. It was called the trials. When you get in a situation like this, where Jordan Oliver will get nothing other than to have to sacrifice and make weight, be away from his home and his family, oh, and then, by the way, take on 5 of the baddest dudes in the world in one day, we need to support that. And that extends to Kuhn, that extends to Porter. We must, at this time, support our own. It is what the Olympics is about. It's the reason they raise that flag and let one person have that one moment while that one song plays. Go back. I want to just tell you guys some other terrible spots, terribly unfortunate, that should be recognized, that should be front page news. And I could just talk about Frank Molinaro in the last cycle. Frank Molinaro makes the team in the third match of 3 with a tied score of 4-4, but wins the criteria. I mean, right, you couldn't be any closer to make a team. So he makes the team, same spot as JL. The weight's not qualified. Molinaro goes over to qualify the weight, ends up 5th. But there was a disqualification with the people in front of him, which moved him up, and at the last minute, he gets a call that he's in the Olympics. I mean, just by example, it's what dreams are made of, but look at everything that Molinaro went through. Held his head high, never backed down, stayed the course, controlled what he could control, which was not much. People love to tell you, oh, control what you can control. Yeah, those people like to write a book and sell it on Amazon. The reality is some people don't have a choice. The guy that's hungry doesn't have a choice. He's got to find food. It's one of these things. So when you look at what Molinaro went through, and then you look at the reward, which was the Olympics, if anybody deserved it, my goodness, it was him, but what a hard path. You could back up from there. There was a gentleman named Keith Saraki. Keith Saraki won 2 Olympic trials. Entered the Olympic trials, came through the mini tournament, got his hand raised in the 2 out of 3, 2 separate quads. Winner, champion, no disqualification, no failed tests. Record books to this day will represent and back me up when I tell you Keith Saraki was a 2-time Olympic trials winner. He got no Olympics. He didn't get to go to the Olympics. Weight wasn't qualified 1 year. Another weird big arbitration. This whole story unfolded. He didn't get to go to the Olympics. Back up from there. Go to 1984. Randy Lewis versus Leroy Smith. Match ends. Leroy wins. Leroy's on the Olympic team. Arbitration takes place. Arbitration takes place. Leroy was absent of it. Leroy was under the opinion that he was the Olympian, and that's that. Because this really had never been done before. It's very unprecedented. But Randy Lewis, who was present, I only bring that up, not to go back and try to pass judgment. I'm sharing, though, because I think you might think it's interesting. When Randy Lewis wants a verdict, and Randy Lewis shows up face-to-face with the guy who's going to render the decision, and Leroy's not even there, how would you like to do that? You wouldn't like to be heard? You wouldn't like to say your piece? Okay. So this is how it happens. Judge orders. Now stay with me here because this isn't how they would do this today. There was 42 seconds left in the match when the strange call was made. What Randy argued was the strange or wrong call was made. There was 42 seconds left in the match, and Randy was ahead 4-2. And if any part of those numbers are off, I don't want to hear it. My point is 100% accurate. So the judge rules that as bad time. He invokes that they're going to roll out a mat, weigh these guys in, bring them out, and re-wrestle that 42 seconds. So in other words, a completely fresh Randy Lewis is going to step onto the mat with a 2-point lead. Now, Leroy was second in the world. But Randy, who ends up beating Leroy under these circumstances, makes the Olympic team. He wins a gold medal a matter of weeks later. So we have two of the best guys in the world, two of the absolute best, not a maybe. We got a silver medalist and a gold medalist, not a maybe. Two of the best guys in the world. One of them gets a 2-point lead, and there's only 40 seconds on the clock. I mean, how would you guys handle that? You know how you'd handle it. You'd handle it the way that Randy handled it. You could win that match. You could close that out. Completely fresh, sure you could. So I only bring that to you because it's just one of these things where there is a history in this sport that it can be very hard. It can be very trying. And I just ask as a community that we support our guy, particularly right now. And don't be afraid to thank him either. If you pass an Adam Kuhn, a Jesse Porter, a Jordan Oliver, don't be afraid to thank him for what he's doing because he's not getting anything else for it. He's doing it for us. The sport gets very competitive, and there's a lot of stuff, and there's a lot of selfishness that the great athletes will have. The Olympic Games is about us. They're doing it for us. So it's important that you appreciate it. It's important that you thank them, and before you think, well, I don't know how to. Sure you do. Social media. Go in there right now and boost somebody's spirits. Imagine these guys cutting weight, stressed out. Talk about a high-pressure situation. I can't think of anything with more pressure than that. And athletes are so quick to deny pressure. Oh, the pressure's on him, or I have no pressure. Fine, I have all the pressure in the world. What's the difference? What would possibly be wrong with admitting that? As a way of alleviating some of it. When I bring this story to you because when you look back at our Olympic heroes and you just look at what some guys have had to go through, even 4 years later, to use Randy Lewis by example, Randy Lewis comes out of retirement to make another team, but runs into in the final. Randy's the defending Olympic champion. He runs into in the finals the guy who went on to be the Olympic champion. So if that match would have happened 3 months later than it happened, it would have been Olympic champion versus Olympic champion. That young man is a guy named John Smith, Leroy's little brother with Leroy in the corner. I mean, if you ever want a good, juicy story in wrestling, that's the one you want to go study. Doesn't get any better than that. Or what about in 1996? When Kendall Cross, who goes on to be the Olympic champion, has to beat a 2-time world champion named Terry Brands just to get on the team. And you don't have to go back that far. You can go back to 16. When Kyle Schneider, who went on to be Olympic champion, had to beat Varner, the reigning Olympic champion, just to get on the team. But I don't see where their praise comes. I don't see where the thank you comes. I will tell you in any other sport. Use football by example. I was a Division I athlete. Football was a big deal. I was at University of Oregon. School was second in the country when I was there, so I really felt how big football can be. There was a top 25, and that was just a rating. You didn't have to go earn it. You didn't have any competitive architecture. You had no tournament whatsoever. A computer generated. You guys remember that? Something called the BCS? A computer generated, but if you came out in the top 25, you were celebrated. You were going to sell out arenas. You'd have no tickets on sale. The boosters would come pouring money in. The college scouts would come pouring in. The media would come pouring in. Because a computer said you were top 25. In wrestling, if you end up second, even to the gold medalist, they're quick to dismiss it. I just don't love that idea. And guys, we can stop that. We can say enough. Frankly, 3 medals every 4 years over 6 weight classes is not enough. And there's a part of us who lived through what we went through in 2016, watched what Rich Bender and other leaders did to fight just to keep the sport within the games. But because that happened, a lot of us are grateful, and therefore we remain quiet. I would only suggest for you, don't be against the idea of turning 6 weight classes back into 8. And once we get 8, not saying we're done there either and fighting for 10. I can remember when John Smith won the Olympic Games. I can remember when Mark Schultz and Dave Schultz won the Olympic Games. It was spread over 3 days. They eventually shortened it to 2 days. Why are we at 1 day? Why are we at 1 day? And I say this as a fan. I say this as a spectator. It's going to be very hard for me to get my wife on an airplane, fly to a foreign country when I tell her we're going to have 1 day of entertainment. You got to think of it from that standpoint. Why would we not sell out 2 arenas instead of 1? The NCAA sets all of these records. It's the same amount of people. They just recount them every time they kick them out and make them walk back through the door. It's called a new session. So it would seem to me as though we could back this with numbers, we could support this, but we got to do it as a community. A lot of food for thought here, guys. But this is a trying time. Pick a side or stand aside. Olympic Games. For some of us, for 3 of our guys, it's still the trials. Support them. Tell them you support them. And do it now.